My name is Ivan Sokolov. I'm a Grandmaster, and this is a DVD Sokolov Method that I have done for ichess.net. This is a course that is going to help you hopefully become a better player. Let me quickly say something about my career. I became a Grandmaster in 1987, and a couple of times I reached top 12 in the world. I did beat a number of world champions in a classical time limit play like Kasparov, Kramnik, Anand, and even a Carlsen before he became a world champion. I always liked dynamic chess, and nowadays I'm more a coach and a writer, and I hope to pass my knowledge to you in this course. Now let me talk to you about course a bit. I did divide course in a kind of 10, let's say, sub-chapters, 10 learning chapters. And I did start with openings. Of course, openings should be based on everything. And I started with how you build your opening repertoire. And you normally should build it in a way that you get to know yourself, that you are comfortable with it, and that you kind of feel good with the opening you're going to get. And I get back to it once I start talking chapter per chapter. Well, number two is, of course, that you should trust your opening choice. It is called the trust your guns. Like, don't be scared if you feel that somebody might try to prepare against you. Number three, King's Indian is actually the most frequent guests in the open tournaments, and my idea is to try to help you prepare with the white pieces to face this opening. This is also what I will do in these kind of chapters. And then if you blunder, do not panic. This is an important aspect of the game, because most of the people, they blunder a move of their opponent and they say, oops, and then everything starts to go wrong. Does not need to go wrong, because sometimes you didn't even play a bad move, but you perceive it as such because your opponent's move comes as a surprise. And I'm somehow going to try to help you to get over it. Then I would, of course, deal with common middle games, because middle game is the most important aspect of chess after the opening. And I would like to try to teach you the basic plans and basic methods which should help improve your practical over-the-board middle game play. Then, of course, initiative is an important part of chess. So how do we size initiative is also going to be one of those sub-chapters, one of those lectures. Then, of course, intuitive sacrifice is going to be part of our course, because what is chess, what is life without intuition, and what is chess without sacrifice? So, of course, we're going to be busy with this. Then I will have to show you a couple of standard attacking teams. Of course, there are many attacking teams, but I will be busy showing some of them, because, of course, in one chess course, you cannot take it all. Then, of course, we will have material imbalance. Material imbalance is an important aspect of chess, and I will show a couple of examples. And finally, we are going to end with the 10 must-know endings. So I hope somehow that this material divided, I have tried to be all around with material, will actually make you a better player. Yes, in chapter 1, I'm going to start with building up your opening repertoire and how you do this. I guess the most important part is that you get to know yourself. For example, for me, when I'm trying to get something, when I build my opening repertoire, for example, for me personally, king safety is something which is very important. If I play white, space is also something which is important. I normally do not like to hang on the lines where you are supposed to memorize 20 move variation in some sharp Najdorf, because if you don't, you're going to get mated. This is not how I work, but this is, however, maybe how you work. So most important is to get to know yourself and what you want to get when you are preparing for the opening, because your computer may give you some nice evaluation, but if this is not positioned for you, you might actually mess it up later on. And I have here given some games, let's say, of a current world champion, Magnus Carlsen, 2 of them, from a recent Vaikanze top tournament, Tata Steel, where he actually didn't do anything special in the opening, but he got positions which he liked and which his opponents did not feel really comfortable with, and scored 2 actually quite easy victories.
Welcome to my 15-hour chess course made for iChess. I have divided this chess course in 10 different chapters. 10 different chapters chess course. So we call it Ivan Sokolov chess course, where I have tried to somehow combine the experience and the knowledge I acquired in the last 25 years as a professional chess player, and to bring it to you to help you improve your chess. This 15-hour chess course and these 10 chapters, I have tried to touch every aspect of the game, to help you improve on every aspect of the game. So to give some kind of a bit of information, first 3 chapters would deal with opening part. Number 1, this one will deal with how do you build your opening repertoire, how do you choose the lines which you play and to work on. Number 2 would be more like, okay, if you prepare and you have your opening repertoire, should you be really afraid that somebody is going to prepare? So should you kind of trust your guns, saying, well, all right, I have worked hard and I trust my opening knowledge, I trust my insights, and if somebody wants to prepare, okay, so be it. Maybe I know about position more. Or should you be changing your opening lines according to opponent you meet? And in that respect, I did provide some insight to recent match I played against Dutch reigning champion, the most promising Dutch young player, Jordan van Forst. Chapter number 3 will be in a way connected to this chapter number 2, because in this chapter number 2 I was facing a King's Indian from my young opponent, and I prepared for it and I stuck to the same line, ultimately scoring 3 out of 3 with white, scoring 100% results. So I fully believed in my opening preparation and I scored maximum result. Chapter number 3 will connect to this King's Indian example and will kind of give you my insight, what my advice is to help you meet King's Indian in open tournament play, because King's Indian is still one of the most frequent guests in open tournament play, and I will try to help you improve on it. And also there will be a detailed PGM in this King's Indian lines, and also this second chapter connected to it, and this PGN should help you prepare and to memorize the variations and to be more ready when you meet somebody in a King's Indian in open tournament. For the rest of my course, of course, there would be, to every game given would be also PGN given, but would be of course less detailed because it is not an opening work. Only to chapter 2 and 3, which is opening work, the PGN is going to be detailed. The rest would be just given. So then chapter 4 will deal with the psychological aspect of a chess, which is if you blunder during the game, do not necessarily panic, because blunder is not always a blunder. Sometimes it looks like a blunder, but actually you made a good move. Chapters from 5 to 9 will deal with all different kind of aspects of a middle game, from this standard middle game features like open file, rook on a second rank, to fight for a dominance between 2 opposite colored bishops, to developing of initiative, different aspects of material imbalances, intuition in chess, sacrifice based on the intuition, all is going to be there. To complete this course with chapter 10, which will be 10 different endings, which I viewed as a must-know endings, and also some example how the world greats, even including one world champion, actually failed in over the board practical play to kind of show, to display this what you may seem like which may seem like a basic knowledge, because when you are in the fight and under the pressure of a tournament play, then you tend to make mistakes even if you happen to be a coming world champion. But now let's start with chapter 1, so how to build your opening repertoire. Try to find what you're comfortable with. I would give you an example. I was never comfortable with weak king. That was never what I wanted. So for me, actually, king safety was always important. Space was for me definitely, playing with white, very important. memorizing of long variations where actually forgetting one small detail will make you as good as dead was never my cup of tea. I never wanted this. I always wanted to play some opening lines where I understand what is going on, I understand the plans, I remember more or less what I analyzed, and if I forget some small detail in over the board play, it is not a big deal because I should be able somehow to figure it out. This was the way I was always preparing throughout my 25-year professional career. Some people do not mind to enter some crazy Sicilian, fall under attack, and remember all the computer moves to defend their position. This is not what I want, but if you are comfortable with, that's a different story. I will here try to present building up your opening repertoire on something which is within your comfort zone and not forcing you to remember endless lines. And I will start with world champion Magnus Carlsen and his 2 games which he played at Tata Steel Super Tournament this year, 2017. Both of them against top grandmaster. I will start with a game which he played against young Chinese prodigy Wei Yi, 2700 plus player, younger than Carlsen, that some people even predict might once upon a time perhaps get even a title shot. So Magnus is playing white. He opens e4, e5. Wei Yi is very well known for his dynamic play, for his ability to remember very long lines, good opening preparation, and for not being scared of entering long dynamic tactical lines. So Magnus already on a move 2, he plays move bishop c4, sending a clear signal that he would prefer game to be out of theory, out of books, that he would prefer game to be positional, to be more about understanding, rather than direct tactical shots. So he is already building up a case that would be within his comfort zone, and accidentally in this case, also a bit without comfort zone of a Wei Yi who is not crazy about those positions. He is much better when direct play is taking place on the board. Knight f6, d3, c6, knight f3, d6, castles, bishop e7, bishop e3, castles, c3, knight bd7, all the normal developing moves, rook e1. As you may see, white is playing here rather unpretentious opening. But we have black pawn structure. It is more or less like he's playing a Philidor, but white pawn is still on d3, and white knight is on b1. In a Philidor, normally knight is on c3, but black structure is exactly the same, because it is like, for example, e4, e5, knight f3, d6, push. You see, black structure is exactly the same. White structure is different. This knight will go to d2, to f1. Pawn is still on d3. White's structure actually more resembles to Ruy Lopez. Question is how the black should continue here. In this particular game, black Wei Yi decided to play move knight c5. Willing true to his style, somehow he will opt for a little bit forcing play, try to get a little bit forcing play, which actually does not apply to this quiet position. What was the other way to play this position? For example, when I play this position a couple of times with black, I always try to get a good version of Ruy Lopez Breyer variation. Why? You may say, what has this got to do with the Breyer, with Ruy Lopez? Because white played bishop c4 as early as move 2, so how can this ever be connected? Well, it can be connected. Okay, let me explain. In Breyer, you have very similar structure as black, and the knight does not go to d7 in one go. Knight first goes to c6, goes back, and then goes to d7. So let's see. Let's try to compare this position to some classical Ruy Lopez Breyer variation positions. So e4, e5, knight f3, of course knight c6. We are playing a classical Ruy Lopez. Bishop c4, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles. Bishop e7, rook e1, so standard Ruy Lopez. And now Breyer variation move is knight b8. Now let's see. For example, d4 is of course main white move. Knight bd7, knight bd2, bishop b7. If we would compare this position to, let's say, what we got here. Okay, what do we have? Pawn is here already on d2, this is true. Let's count tempis a little bit. White bishop got to b3 here in a 3 moves. Bishop b5, bishop a4, bishop b3. In this variation, got in only 2 moves. Bishop c4, bishop b3. But this knight got to d7 here in 2 moves. Knight c6, knight b8, knight d7. Here it came in a 1 go. So black is a tempi up. Okay, black got pawn on c6 here. In this particular variation, that pawn is on a6. Everything else is the same. Okay, I would say in this position between pawn on c6 and pawn on a6 is probably better to have it on a6. But very often black plays move a5, so then you get there in a 1 go. Also, d3 is sometimes what people play. Knight d7, then you get again such a kind of position where yes, you later play move c5. You want to play c5 and d5. So in that respect, you may say that actually it will be more or less the same number of tempis, provided you would get into this line, which is not the most direct variation for white. And again, with black you can play a5 and a4. Not to mention that in this regular line of Ruy Lopez, Breyer, for example, move c6 is quite common. Let's say such a kind of play is quite common. There is nothing unusual about this. This is one of the standard setups for black. Black would then play g6, bishop g7, and black would try to play this like old Indian kind of flexible pawn structure setup. So what I wanted to say is that I do not really like this move knight c5. And I preferred to play it in a Spanish style. So for example here, I would have preferred to play a move like b5. b5 in order to play move bishop e7 and to try to play it like Breyer, Ruy Lopez. Playing this position with black, let's say once Michael Adams, also decided to play like a Ruy Lopez type of game. He played first move rook e8, h6. White pushed, so now we are getting more or less Ruy Lopez kind of pawn structure. Because rook e8, bishop f8, h6 are typical for Zaitsev variation moves. Queen c7. Now he pushes. Knight b6. So here, for example, Adams wanted to cover square f5. That's why he played move knight b6. But moves like bishop b7 or g6, playing it in a Ruy Lopez type of style is possible. Knight b6 is also Ruy Lopez kind of setup. h3. Here he pushed a5. They had quite a complicated game. Knight h2, a4. Taking a space on a queen side like this by black in this system in order to deprive white from the square for his bishop. So bishop cannot return this and terrorize black on this diagonal. Is kind of quite common. Is quite common on this line. This is nothing unusual here. My mouse went on the wrong direction. And what Adams was doing is a typical kind of play. Later on, he went on to win this game. It was very complicated. So, knight c5, I'm not crazy about. Because it is not really hitting on a center. Bishop g4. Yes, this bishop is now out. This is a kind of plan. Knight bd2. White is ready to push move d4. So knight h3. He wants, so black goes away with his knight from c5, for that knight is attacked. Bishop h4, knight f1. What I do not like so much about this knight on e6 is that it is not really stopping d4 ideas. It is not like a d4 will not come because this knight is hitting on a d4. I mean, white is going to prepare it and he will push it at some stage. At the same time, with knight on d7 and this bishop, for example, on b7, in let's say such a kind of positions, black is supporting d5 and c5 because knight is protecting a pawn and black would like to play here like c5, rook e8, bishop f8, d5, push those pawns, rook c8, c4. Here with knight on e6, it is a bit different because this bishop is going to be misplaced or to be given for this knight on f3. Pawn on e5 will be hanging because this knight is not protecting anything. I'm not crazy about this plan for black to place knight to e6. I think it is quite passive. Knight e7. Why does a black play move knight e7? Well, black is playing move knight e7 because given the central pawn structure, so you see pawns d3, e4, e5, d6, actually trade of dark square bishops is intelligent for black. It's a good trade because of the given pawns on those squares, because okay, I have it on black, so let's trade it. And also black will have slightly less space because white will push d4 at some stage. So to actually trade a pair of light pieces is not a bad idea. Magnus here pushes a g4. Quite a radical decision, willing to lock this bishop out. This is a kind of a common decision. I think I have first seen it even in some game of Capablanca. In the case of knight g3, which has been played in practice, black takes and plays move bishop g5, trading those bishops. Such a position, yes, these bishops are traded. Pawn on g6 is controlling this knight, so it's not like that white is going to get any kind of big attack, nothing like this. But actually white is slightly better. Why? First of all, white has a more space. This bishop will come to b3 and will be unpleasant on a2, g8 diagonal. Knight from g3, okay, at the moment he has no future on g3 because this pawn is holding him. But knight will go to f1, g3 will happen, h4, taking a space on a king side. White needs to be patient and to build up his advantage slowly, but this position is not equal. White is better, and on the long term, white can have a great pressure on black. Simply, white is having a better game here. Black cannot easily take because it will give white a center. He cannot easily make a break, any kind of break, because bishop is strong. Obviously, you cannot push c5, c6, c5 because with my bishop on b3 and all these light squares, this would be positional capitulation. Once I had exactly same pawn structure with black versus Peter Liko. It came in that game from a straight Rue Lopez, but came exactly same pawn structure, only my pawn being on, later my pawn came to b5. My pawn was on b5, but exactly same pawn structure. those two knights versus bishop and the knight, and I suffered. Ultimately, I managed to make a draw, but I really suffered. So this position is not equal. White can definitely keep on sitting on a black for a prolonged period of time here. Okay, Magnus had a different plan in mind. He pushed g4, bishop g6, knight g3. Okay, what he wants to do is obvious. He wants to lock out this bishop. Again, the best strategy for a black is to trade couple of pieces, and black indeed plays move knight g5. For example, queen c7 will be wrong because white actually has attack. King will go to g2, rook will go to h1, and there will be attack on king, or king will go to h2, rook will go to g1, knight will jump to f5, g5 is going to be utilized, g5. So there is an attacking potential. In order to stop this attacking potential, black wants to trade off a couple of pieces. Takes d4. White takes space. Bishop f4, knight e2, queen f6. Okay, Magnus is simply improving his king to make sure this knight doesn't hang once he takes on f4. And now Vei wants to do something active in order to make a use out of this locked out bishop. It is important maybe to mention that computer engines actually they do not understand let's say the minus points of this locked out bishop. Simply computer engines, they don't understand this. In for example positions like this, if there is no immediate attack, they happily play some stupid move like h6, and they do not mind having this piece being locked out, which is of course completely crazy. For a human, this is on the long run something quite different and something to worry about. So what Vei wants, he takes, because he wants to make some use out of this bishop and connect it to pressure on the e file in order to hit on this pawn. Knight takes, rook f8, takes, queen takes, f3. Now is question how to play this position, because this bishop is still locked out. What white wants, white actually would not mind trading queens and then try to sit on this pawn weakness and later to maybe advance his pawn. This is what white wants. You may, for example, argue here, did black need to take on d4? Could he, for example, just sit? Well, he could sit, but white actually will be better here. It is due to more space. For example, takes, takes. It may look equal. You may say, well, okay, I have this bishop which is now coming out. My pawns are on black squares. I'm having a light square bishop. Everything should be good. But actually, due to more space, white is better because of this pawn being on d4 and white being actually ready to get dominant over a d file. Let's say bishop f7. For example, such a position. White is better here because of more space. Black needs to be careful. His knight cannot move because I will grab on e5 and grab on e5 using this pin. White will push c4. Taking some more space at some stage. White can also can play knight g1, knight e2, f4. White is definitely having a pressure here. I'm not saying that white should win this position, nothing close to it, but I'm saying that position is not equal. That white does have a pressure, and this is something which actually type of a game which Magnus in this game did not mind. It was within his comfort zone. He was playing a guy who is very tactical, and Magnus himself likes those small advantages. So actually, his opening play was aimed to such a type of positions. So what I want to say, because we are busy with this chapter, build your repertoire, when you are choosing which opening to play, think about which kind of middle game you are likely to get. Which kind of type of play in a middle game you are likely to get, and are you comfortable with this situation? If you are, then this is the right choice. Do not blindly look at the openings like, oh, my computer is popping up this kind of advantage, let's go for it. Not really, because your 0.50, let's say, advantage if you're white, in the case that you are unhappy with the position, is going to evaporate. So you need to be happy with the position you're playing and make sure to understand it. So here Carlsen is playing position which is within his comfort zone. Definitely not within a comfort zone of AE, because, for example, he does not want to enter any waiting position. He does not want to enter a position like this. He wants to get active play, and that's why he takes. His problem, position actually does not really allow active play. This is a bit of a problem. White is probably having some very small advantage, which with a decent play of black, patient, good defense of black should be a draw. But black cannot create active play in this kind of position. So now is a decision what to play. To push d5, which would be a logical move, or not to push d5. Ultimately, black decides that he would like to push d5, but make sure that he doesn't end with isolated pawn, and that's why he plays move knight b6, willing to push and being ready to take by knight. Question is, what happens if he does it immediately? Actually, white gets somewhat better game. Let's say takes. Let's say rook e8, bishop a4, queen moves, queen d2, takes. White is having some advantage here. What would be, for example, here very good for white will be, for example, a trade of those two rooks. If I can accomplish trade of two rooks, I'm in a very good shape with white. Problem is that after a move, let's say like rook e1, black plays move f6, saying if you want to trade my rook, trade it, but then you will improve my pawn structure. I think that such a position is very difficult to somehow win for white, to get it to trade those rooks, because if I would trade those rooks, then indeed, for example, look rook e1, if you would not play f6, if you would take, then yes, combination of queen and the knight can work very well to this queen and the bishop, because at some stage this bishop would be hitting plenty of empty squares. But as long as rooks are on a board, black is having a dynamic activity, and I doubt that white has any objective chances of getting more than a draw from such a kind of play. For example, queen c1 can be played also, and to lead to similar consequences. Very similar consequences. And again, same position. So I think actually that d5 was definitely a move to play. I guess that such a type of positions, these ones, for example, were maybe not within a comfort zone of AE. Perhaps he was worried that Carlsen would find somehow a way to sit on him forever. Though I think it is a difficulty, even if somebody has such a fantastic technique like a Magnus. But this is again something, a middle game, coming likely from the opening, being within a comfort zone of a one player and not the other, and Magnus correctly judging which kind of middle game may actually happen. So he went for this position, and Wei decided, no, I do not want to play isolated pawn position. I want clean change, trading d for e, no isolated pawn, symmetry. But now he would not get symmetry. Queen c1, good move. Takes. Problem is if you refuse to take, white locks bishop out. And then again we have situations that, for example, here computer only would give like 0.25, 0.30, because engine does not understand that this, let's say, that at some stage white will push and that this locked out bishop is a problem. For a human it is a problem. And I think objectively it is a problem. I think that simply engine does not understand long-term effect of this bishop lockout. So obviously Vei does not want to see it. So he takes, and now he finally pushes d5. What is he hoping for? Well, he's hoping for this, obviously. And the pawn symmetry and the draw. Problem is that after a queen trade, queen c1, rook c1, now when he pushes, e5 square is no longer defended, so white can push. Knight d7, f4. Threatening f5, takes. Now let's try to understand this position. You may say, well, not a big deal. 2 rooks and knight versus 2 rooks and knight, same number of pawns. Okay, white has majority on the king side, black has majority on the queen side, it should be a draw. Actually, it is not easy to play for black. Why? Because black cannot so easily push his pawns, because white knight is going to threaten to come to d6. Be either b5 or f5. White is very much ready to push his pawns. He will play rook e2, f5, e6, g5. He will push his pawns and he will pressure black. Here, Vei playing black, now he really does not feel comfortable with the situation. And he tries his best to create active play. Active play which position does not allow to create. And he will actually lose this game in a couple of moves. This position, which is better for white, but okay, better, playable for black, he will lose in a few moves, because he will really try to create active play. Knight c5, rook e3, rook a d8. For example, if move like knight e6, king moves, for example, such a rook ending is far from easy draw, very far. Because again, king side pawn majority of a white counts. Queen side pawn majority of a black does not count, because he cannot push c5. White 3 pawns are holding black 4. Rook a d8, king f3. Here black decides to go for an active play. Knight e4, hoping to push b4, push, g5. Unfortunately for black, position does not support it. He is having this active knight, but this knight is not supported by other pieces, and Magnus wins the game in a few moves. c4. Not easy for black, because let's say if he takes, king takes, c takes d, rook c7 will enter, knight f5 will enter. This knight on e4 is quite unstable. He is not supported by other pieces, and this is actually a problem for black. Black will play here move c5, somehow hoping after bc5 to finally escape with his knight. This would be quite a good news for black. He will get his tactical possibilities. Problem is that Magnus plays move knight b5. And this knight cannot go anywhere. Gf4, king f4. C takes d5 is a terrible threat. And simply black does not have enough play to justify this hanging knight. C takes d5 is a threat, and knight c7 taking on d5 is also a threat, so position is lost. Takes. Knight is more or less trapped. Okay, this is a blunder in already lost position. And black has resigned. So we have here an example of, he will say, simple play. World champion playing unpretentious opening, very unpretentious opening, playing one of the actually most talented players from a younger wave, Wei Yi, who in Vaikanzai also finished the tournament with very decent result. He finished in the middle, I think he had 50%. Coming star. White playing very unpretentious opening, but actually scoring an easy win. Because it was superb judgment by Magnus about the middle game that will going to come from the opening. Subsequently also it resulted into ending, which was very much within a comfort zone of a Magnus and very much not in a comfort zone of Wei Yi. And even though for a long part of a game, White had just extremely small advantage, like your engine would say, I think 0.20, 0.30. In over the board play, White actually felt very comfortable and scored an easy win. So again, when you prepare for your game, analyze the game of your opponents and try to figure it out, not only opening which he plays, but which kind of middle game positions he is uncomfortable with. Sometimes I have a situation with my students, not sometimes, actually very often, that they look at the game of their opponent, they look at their openings, they have this chess-based tree, and then after seeing the lines which their opponent is playing, they decide on their own decision. But when I say seeing the lines which opponent is playing, that they don't have a look at the whole game. They have a look at the first 17, 18 moves and evaluation. The point, then I say, don't do this. Have a look at the whole game of your opponent and have a look at a number of them which they lost. And try to figure it out, is this loss a product of a middle game position which they did not like, something they did not feel comfortable with. And then if getting into such a position is within your own comfort zone, then do it. Because even if computer may not give you some kind of big advantage, or maybe any advantage at all, maybe computer will give you equality, if you are more comfortable with such a kind of middle game, you're likely to outplay your opponent later on. And this is what we had here actually in this particular game. And this was a very good judgment by Magnus. And now I would move to game 2, which is going to also to show some superb judgment of Magnus versus Radek Wojtaszek, who is expert in Najdorf. So how to get against the Najdorf, something which could be new, could be unusual. So let's get to it. This would be game number 2 in this chapter.